Hey everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, with another video for you. So first off, I'd like to give a shout out to one of my Patreon supporters, Seamus Yoder. Thanks for your support. Now in this video, we're going to go as my first run through from the Time-Twisted maze, which is unlocked after the prologue. Now if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. So first off, after finishing the prologue, you can warp directly here, and it's in the same areas as the space-time rift, which actually makes a lot of sense, being that this is kind of a distorted time period and in the middle of, I guess, different time, just like the space-time rift or other things like the underworld and so on and so forth. Now that being said, you do get a conversation with Noaxis, and he kind of tells you a little bit about background story, and then we go right directly into the menu, which you can now access through your records to help you with the Time-Twisted maze. Now, given that this is my first time running through, I didn't read this very carefully. However, the whole idea is that you are allowed to bring 4 units, and you can use any of the units in your roster. Now, different units will have different attributes, and so depending on how you want to build your team, you can choose accordingly. Now, for myself, I already had a team in mind, and so I will show you what team I used. Note that you only do have 4 characters, so I went with Asaki. Note that is a magic user. I now went with a couple of lance users, one of my favorites, of course, which is AS Hismina. Note that she is a defensive type, aka she's going to be the tank for this team. And of course, my own waifu. I know it's my anniversary with my real waifu, but we're going to go with the Suzette normal style because she has an attack type, which is basically like a frontline fighter. And finally, Iska, which is a tech type. So I'm assuming that the different types of characters will have different attributes. Keep in mind that as you find certain things like the runes, which are equipable, they will allow your characters on your team to be a lot more effective in the battles. And so you do want to bring a varied team, being that the runes you find will be very random. And so you do want to have, I would recommend at least one of each of 4 different types. I believe there are 5 different classes of characters. The 5th one I didn't use is support. Alright, so a couple of things to note here. You start at level 1, no matter what team you bring in, and obviously the very first battle is going to be the toughest. You do have a half bar AF if you did bring in a half bar, which I highly recommend having a half bar here. Otherwise, you are only forced to use normal attacks until you find more runes, and the runes are essentially like an element, kind of like the complex dream, where you're going to be able to equip them. As you find runes, and you also get a few to start, as you noticed in the very beginning when we warped in. You can equip them onto your 4 units. Now, it does take a little bit of getting used to in terms of playing around with how the menus go. I was getting more stuck with how to kind of rotate through the different characters, and so I just went nice and easy, party, then choose the unit and then equip appropriately. And so obviously you want to choose the runes and moves based on the weapon types, which you then have. They do have some suggestions. Obviously it works better on certain things. So for example, if it's a pierce type attack, you would want to ideally equip it on a pierce type unit. If it's slash type attack, likely you'll also put it on a slash type unit. So again, if you can bring different weapon types as well, you'll probably have a better old time. In this case, hey, we want to bring in the fun team that we want, or units that you haven't used, or just popular units you want. Now note that this blue exclamation, do not click on it until you've explored completely the entire dungeon. It goes in very similar in a setup to a normal dungeon where you have 3 different areas you explore. Finally, you will come back and fight a boss on the 4th level. Now note that within each of these levels, you have almost like an entire area to explore, and then you'll have to come back to that blue exclamation mark at the end of all 3 areas. So if you click it prematurely, a couple of things. You will not find all the treasures you want, as well as you won't have enough opportunities to fight these random mobs. Now, they're not random in terms of coming in and fighting you. You just have to run into them just like normal. if you see something like this, make sure you just press on it instead of walking right through. There are some traps, and you don't want to trigger them. I don't know what they do, but I believe they would either damage you or just make life harder for you. So why do that, right? So like I said, just explore as you need to. Now, if you see that large glowing orb on the top left corner, it starts at blue, and it does explain this in the instructions if you care to read through it, but it goes cycling from 4 different colors: blue, then red, then yellow, blue, then green, then yellow, then red. And each subsequent color makes it more and more likely that if you take too much time exploring, and let's be honest, this is our first foray into this dungeon, it's going to take some time to get used to it. If you take too much time within the 3 areas before warping out to the next round of areas, you will then run into problems where a horror will show up, which I did not want to do, and I did not show it on this video, and in which case I'm assuming that the boss will be very difficult to beat, and or it'll just kill you straight up. Now keep in mind, if you get killed prematurely, you don't get all the rewards that you'd like. So the whole goal, of course, is to try to play properly, just like when we first started at level 1 with very little equipment, very little armor, and very little gear. In this case, as soon as you find a new rune, you really want to read it and see what it does until you get familiar with it. In this case, I started with emergency aid, obviously on my mage or magic type user Aosaki. Makes sense that a lot of these roles will be very similar to what they do outside this dungeon, and so you just kind of try to play around with the combinations as needed. In this case, again, I noticed that I did run into it, and by doing that, I assume that when it says a powerful enemy is coming closer, that actually speeds up the timer on the upper left-hand corner, which is that glowing blue color, and we don't want it to change prematurely to green, yellow, or red. Other than that, if you're wondering why I'm not using AF, you're supposed to save it for a future enemy, which I'll show you later on in the video. Again, my first foray, I did not realize what I'm supposed to do, and that's not cool. So note that certain runes are only equipable at certain classes of characters, which is why I said that you really want to bring 4 different character classes. In this case, this one says DEF, which is your defensive unit, and so of course AS Hismina being our tank, we will now put that equipment pierce on her. The runes have 3 different star levels. Obviously, the higher star levels will be more effective. I'm not sure how you can upgrade them. This is, again, my first foray. I'm sure as I do future runs, you'll be able to unlock some of these abilities. Otherwise, make sure you spread out the runes such that all 4 of your units do have at least 1 equipped so that you can have, a move. And as you get higher in levels, at the time of this video, I was only able to unlock to level 10. Then you can equip more runes as well. So just make sure you explore everything, and instead of pressing the blue exclamation mark, we move directly into the next area. And again, we have to explore these areas completely, all 3 areas, and then cycle back to where that blue exclamation mark in order to explore the next set of areas. It does take a long time. If you notice from the length of this video, we're talking over 40 minutes, which, let's be honest, you're not going to be able to do this, run multiple runs in one day, unless, you don't have to work or you just booked off a lot of time. Again, obviously, as a working dad as well as a gamer dad, I obviously have a full-time job, probably won't be able to do many runs. I honestly, being the fact that this actually does not require any red or green keys. Remember, that's one important thing about this feature, everyone. Does not require any red or green keys. And so, in that case, you can run it at your leisure, kind of like with harpoon fishing, yak, or regular fishing, yak. And whenever you feel the need to run it, you can do so. I believe there's also a pause button, although for the sake of this video, I did a complete run through. So in the case of pausing, I'm assuming you just pause it, and so you can warp back as a single save moment, just like the original JRPGs where you can kind of save it, such that you can kind of break it into maybe 1 or 2 runs instead of just a 1 super long run, which again, in this case, I know is my first foray and we're talking 40 minutes. I'm assuming by exploring, you're still talking like 20 to 30 minutes. I can't see any way to kind of not pick up everything. I mean, maybe there are some guides from Japan where you don't have to pick up all the treasures, all the sparkles. I can't see why you would do that, because the sparkles can give you regeneration, either MP or HP, which you've seen. and the treasure chest you will need in order to make your unit stronger. And so again, unless you're fully equipped with super mega type of runes, and I'll show you later on in the video that you can actually save some of your progress in terms of runes for the next run. Again, I'm not sure how that interacts because this is my first run. I did it anyways, and I can show you that when we get to that point in the video. Now note that I'm dilly-dallying a little bit too much, wasting a little bit too much time, and so we are at the yellow. Remember, the next color is red. Okay, so of course, goes without saying, make sure you collect all the chests, right? The chests will give you the important runes you have. I'm assuming that red chests are more rare than brown colored chests, probably have better runes or better things in it. Remember, there also are items that you can bring out of the dungeon. In this case, if you look at what we have there, it is called Deafness 2. Look, that is blue, so this is probably a more rare rune, and so we can equip that when needed. There are also charms that you can pick up along the way, and they do, what they do. So you just keep them in hand until you find the need to use them. Now, if you want to save time, you don't have to equip every time you find a new rune, but, once in a while, definitely, unless you're very familiar with all the runes, and you can probably use Japanese websites if you want to go in with full information, or if you're like me, just go in blind and kind of see how it goes for some fun adventures, then you can kind of explore as needed. I mean, at the end of the day, once you read the description of the rune, I'm sure you'll be able to figure out what is needed. Okay, you see that green standing thing that's kind of a crystal thing? It is very similar to those who have played earlier things like Other Lands, or those dungeons like the Hanging Garden for a Seal, or for the dungeon gardens for Miyu. Those are what they call shinies, so to speak. And basically, you have to AF them or they flee. Now, I have showed in this video, there is one time that it doesn't run away. However, it has a high likelihood of running. And if you kill them, there's two different colors, blue and green. I believe green gives you a lot of can't remember now because I was just kind of playing right through. One gives you a bunch of XP, and one gives you something called Arcana Flares, which I think you're using to buy things in the shop within this dungeon. Now, I didn't run into any shops in my first foray through, but I'm assuming it's in the later dungeon, so in the later stages of the dungeon. Okay, so you can see we're red. I'm a little bit worried, but we're still going to try to equip everything we need to ahead of time, and we're running all the way back. So note that we did finish all three areas in this first, I'll call it first wave of the dungeon, and we can follow that blue kind of like the storyline continuation marker, and we made it back to the first area. Make sure we press on the exclamation, and once you do it, you cannot return, which makes sense, just like dungeons in previous things where you can't warp back and forth. And so we finished level 1. Again, you can use vitality orbs if you need to. However, you can save them, and you can only use them, I guess, in between waves. In this case, we did find a sweeter item. Note that these are 2 stars instead of 1. So you can see if you can use the right things, and you have to read which one works which. So obviously you have something like Pain Touch, which is a 1 star. It can inflict pain, and then you'll use the rune that applies damage extra while pain status, and try to combo the teams together such that it's just like building Grasta, or putting on the right gear to give your units the right stacks or right abilities such that you can win the game. In this case, it's a much more simpler combat system. Just equip the runes, aka element system, and just customize your units as needed. Obviously, try to choose 2 and 3 star runes if you can. Again, you are using the best of your abilities and the best items out there. Note that as you get higher up with level 25 and level 50, you can do more things. Again, in this video, once you only finish the first 4, you don't get anything close to that. And so I'm not really sure when you get to continue on or not. And you'll see what I mean by the end of this video. When I did finish the dungeon, it didn't give me any sort of ability to continue on from the end wave of this part of the dungeon, which is in this case 3 levels of 3 different areas of mobs, and then 1 level which is a boss fight. Alright, so I will say that that equipment pierce is pretty sweet. It basically is an AoE, so I don't know how many AoEs there are out there. Again, try to keep your team varied. Now this one's sweet. That looks gold. So I'm assuming that's a 3-star item. Let's take a look and see. And so again, very, very difficult to kind of decide which ones to use. That one's really sweet. Type resist 30%. Obviously, we don't have any type moves yet. And so, yeah, in your first run through, you might not have much of anything, to be honest. But you can clearly see that if you kill all the mobs pretty straightforward, like with your team, first of all, once you get a couple of good runes going, you can basically clear them all in one turn. Doesn't matter any units. Remember, it doesn't matter if you're new to the game or a veteran. You'll still start at level 1. You'll start with near nothing. And then you just kind of go in and kind of play around with it and see how it goes. Alright, back to the action. So again, just clicking on all these items. Some of them give you MP, some of them give you HP, of course. I didn't see any reason to leave them alone. Honestly, just collect them on the way. You don't have time to really run back. And being that, like I said, time is a concern playing these games anyways, this is quite a long time to be playing just for something kind of for fun. In this case, we found a treasure key. Not sure what it does, to be honest. I just kind of held it on, and I'm sure they'll be useful for future runs. My plan is to finish off this run, obviously, which I have for you, and then in future runs where I'm going to the more higher levels, which is level 5 and beyond, I'll try to film my first run through for those to kind of show you my experience, and hopefully if you have either some tips and tricks, which you can share with me if you're better than I am, which I'm sure many of you are, or if you just want to see my experience going in blind and kind of laugh at my trials and tribulations, you can do that as well. Alright. Okay, so back to the action. Just make sure you refresh your runes periodically if you find something cool. Once we finish everything in the area, just rush along to the next area because, like I said, you do have that timer. You don't want to run into some super boss. Okay, so notice that when you say click on this circle to slow the presence of the foe, that is related to the horror that will show up if you don't, if you run out of time. Okay, so like I said, these standy things with the jewels, just bar them down. And let's see what the blue one gives. This one gives the points system, I believe, Arcanic Flares. So the blue one gives a lot of that, and the green ones give you a lot of XP. Keep in mind that you do want a lot of XP because XP makes your unit stronger. When you see there are certain runes that can increase the XP you gain, you should prioritize any rune that helps your unit grow faster. So if it's an XP gain, or in some cases I did find something like an Arcana Flare gain, those are things that are helping you gather more points within the dungeon, or basically get more for less, and you will prioritize those over fighting seals, because really if you equip just one fighting seal, probably enough already, right? And then obviously for the support ones, there's like things like stats up and enhancing certain attacks and so on and so forth. As long as you're winning hard enough, just make sure you have the room to put on a rune that will help you grow faster, like I said, either XP or getting more materials. And I'm sure there's many others out there which I don't have access to since I haven't seen them all yet. As most of you know, I try to go in blind when I do any of these run-throughs. I know there are a lot of resources out there, but unless I come across something super crazy where I really can't get it done, I really do try to go in blind, experience it for myself, and that way, hopefully the experience for me is more authentic, so when you watch the video, you can kind of see a more realistic first-time experience as opposed to a streamlined, like, oh yeah, pro-level kind of a run. Okay, so again, looking at these for the first time here, why not put speed? Obviously, if your unit knows certain units are faster and certain units are slower, then you would try to use these kind of runes to kind of move things around. Again, I'm assuming that fighters or attack type units will be slow. Magic users are obviously extremely slow, just like if you think of the mighties of the world and whatever, they are slower. I'm assuming that they can do some healing or something like that, or they just have attack type magic, which will be interesting if I find something like that. Otherwise, you do have your technique unit, which is like Iska in this case, and a technique unit would kind of be like a hybrid fighter where faster than or a lightly armored fighter as opposed to heavy frontline fighter. And of course, Hesmina is a defensive unit, which obviously would be moderately slow as well. So if you look at my fights, you can clearly see which one's faster. I think Iska acts first and Suzette next, then Hesmina, and then and then Aosaki, that would kind of correspond with, again, what you would expect outside as well. Now, I'm sorry for taking extra time for wandering around. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Again, I know most of these items are staying within this dungeon. Keep in mind that almost everything you find, the runes, are not able to be taken out. Every time you run another dungeon, you will only be able to gather runes for that run and use it during that run, with a little bit of an exception, which I'll show you at the end of the video. Otherwise, the Arcanic Flares you do get to keep. Okay, so again, if you don't have an AF bar, unfortunately, those green and blue crystal blobs or whatever, they run off and you can't do anything about that. I will say, it's unfortunate that you have to explore the map completely. It doesn't show any path. That kind of sucks. So, yeah, that's one thing I don't like. Again, I'm not sure if they're all pre-designed and eventually they're all the same. It's just I'm saying that it's not very fun. And keep in mind that since these treasure chests essentially spawn randomly in random areas, to my knowledge at least, or I'm guessing they're semi-random, then you're going to have to be very, very familiar and run these hundreds of times, I'm assuming, to kind of get the preferred items. That being said, I mean, you're going to be running this hundreds of times anyways, because my understanding is you're going to be bringing out these items called OOP arts, and those are essentially items that translate into real-life weapons outside the dungeon. Some of them have sweet abilities, and they're all RNG. So for those who really like farming for weapons with perfect IVs or super stats or whatever, I mean, this kind of dungeon features for you. I'm not really a big fan of that. I do want to collect one of each weapon because obviously certain weapons, they will be called a certain name. And if you are the fan of collecting items and gear because you want more rewards, you would want to do that. Because remember, for those who don't know, you do get awards for X amount of weapons, armor, and gear total throughout the game. So, like, if you're really new to the game, you only get like awards for Chrono Stones for 10, then 20, then 30, then 40, and so on and so forth. Okay, so again, remember that in between each floor, at the beginning, you asked you whether or not you feel like using one of those vitality charms to kind of refresh 50%. If you find you're kind of getting low, then certainly use it. I don't know if you need to save it or if it's useful to be saved for future runs, but let's be honest, surviving and not losing is more important than just being skimping and cheaping out on items, because remember that if you do die, you lose the vast majority of your items, including any OOP arts I think that you found. If you decide to quit and pause, I believe you bring things out. But if you decide to outright quit, I think you also get less rewards. So obviously, optimally, you would save, flash save or whatever, and then come back to it at a later time, as opposed to completely quitting and not coming back and doing a new run completely. Again, I'm just cloud playing here, not really talking with experience, being that this is still, like I said, my first time, but it's fun. It's certainly fun. As I mentioned in my video yesterday, it definitely gives me the feels of a Lufia 2 kind of dungeon where you're kind of running in, trying to hopefully run into some really rare chests that give you rare items and so on and so forth. All right. One thing I didn't mention, I'm sure you all know by now, the mobs have two different colors, or three different colors. They have blue, which is obviously easy for your current team level. There is like the kind of orange, which is moderately hard, and of course red, which is freaking hard. Okay, again, runs off, darn it, that sucks. I will say that unless you can find multi-hit units, and I don't know if that's the case, or in case of finding multi-hit runes, if you can do that, obviously your AF bar will charge. This is really, really basic fighting, almost like the Lord of Mana side game, which some of you may have farmed to get all those friendship points. Normal attack enhance. Not bad, because if you think about it, normal attack enhance will save you some MP in the long run. I mean, if you look at most of these moves, at least at this level, the low levels, it only costs 2 MP. You start with 60 or 70, you'll be able to cast this like 20, 30, 40 times. So I'm not really too concerned about MP loss. My strategy is to essentially use MP moves all the way through, unless you're running into the teens or 20s, in which case you probably have to wait to find some of those recovery items. I think there are also runes that allow you to recover MP and HP after each battle. Those would be the Cup of Invincibility, which is very similar to the for those who've made it all the way to the Underworld Grasta system, then you'll have those Cup of Invisibility, which essentially allows you to farm infinitely. Okay, we found our first magic specialized Grasta, which is only for magic user, Cascade Jutsu. So that is a water AoE, I think, or water magic attack either way. So that will make Saki Eas quite useful instead of just sitting there doing emergency aid, which basically heals nothing, right? I will say that the difficulty of the fight is not too difficult, and so obviously we're not taking a lot of damage either way. Now, if you're wondering why I left half the map unexplored, I know that from the exclamation mark, we have to backtrack anyways, and so a quick tip, at least that I figured out for this run, try to leave the maps that you're going to have to come back to for sure to finish off unexplored or partially explored. Then you can save some time, and remember that you do want to save the time for two reasons. A, you don't have unlimited time to play video games. Most of us have responsibility in life. And also, secondly, you don't want the horde to come and have that the blue counter change. Hey, it's waiting. So that's good. And you get a lot of XP, so that will help your unit get stronger. You see that we leveled up right there after killing that off. A couple more extra runes. Just check it out and see what it does. Again, we're going to choose party. It's probably easier that way. And so again, if you're not sure if it's a skill or an ability, you can put that. So note that Overload is very similar to the MP consumption or the Rose with Thorns, extra damage in exchange for extra MP points. Now again, you can use it sparingly, or in the case where you're not using any MP, for example, if you have the normal attack all units, for example, or something like that, you can use your normal attack and equip something like that to do extra damage without using any MP. So there definitely are some strategies. You can use all the skills and abilities that you've learned in regular type of Another Eden in order to further your journey along this game as well. Okay, again, I apologize for the long video. This was quite a long exploration, and like I said, I'm not sure if I'll be doing a further run tonight or just leaving it as is. Probably just that's it, because again, as you well know, this is Gamer Mom and Gamer Dad's anniversary, and she's very gracious to let me play, and so I'll acknowledge that right here, right now. Okay, so rapid growth is something you definitely want to pay attention to. Like the name says, it is an item that you can equip. XP plus 10% to the unit you equip it on. So equip it on, obviously, since it's not for every unit, make sure you equip it on the unit that you feel is the most useful, either your main DPS, or if you need a tank, or if you need a support unit or a healer or whatever happens to be the one you use the most. Alright, we ran into another Azure escapee, which is that blue standing whatever, and we blasted it out of oblivion with an AF. Unfortunately, we don't have another AF, but whatever. You have to use the AF when you see it, because you're not going to take the risk of having that run away. And we have another red chest, which is great. So again, red chest, you can clearly see that when you click on it, I'm not sure if there's any other way to open it other than the fact that you do seem to have to fight some higher level mobs. If you keep up on killing every mob out there, you're going to have enough XP to keep up with that. Alright, so another defensive type rune for our tank Hismina. Alright, so note, inflict rage on all enemies and users physical resistance plus 30. So a weaker form of Bertrand, but we'll put it on anyways because it seems to be a more powerful move. And again, it seems to be a more rare move. Remember that 1 to 3 stars, you might as well equip your higher star unit moves unless there's a reason why you don't want to do that. And we have that magic attack blasting the unit into oblivion. Okay. So hopefully this video so far gives you an idea of what to expect. It is a long exploration, and again, it is optional. You can do this at your own pace, at your own time. It doesn't further the story or anything. I believe that, as I said, this was accessible after the prologue, and so, I started this right away. I'm going to do the story this weekend, and I'm going to kind of focus my energies on doing this, and also, obviously, my keys as well. Also, yeah. All right. So hopefully you guys are having fun with your run through the dungeon if you're going to do it. Let me know in the comments below what teams you're planning to use if you are going to, whether or not you're going to go with a 2 attack, 1 support 1 magic, or you're just gonna go all for attack. Keep in mind that if you go all for attack, it will... I'm not sure if that's gonna be easier. Remember my earlier statement is that you're gonna find runes of all 5 different kinds of units. And so in that case, you're definitely going to have issues running through things if you don't have a varied team. Okay, so in this case we have to backtrack, and now we have a third area. Remember, again, 3 areas for each level kind of before progressing. And with the exploration, unless you can skip or find some really quick way of walking, it is going to take you a long time. Alright, for our attack unit, which is Suzette in this case, we do have a break slash. Note that the word said slash, and so it does give you a hint that it's not the most ideal for units that are not slash units. Best with, and so we don't have a slash unit. We can equip it anyways, and I just default to the more better move, or more common move, which in this case is just impale. I mean, at this point, we're still not losing. Our levels, if you look at our characters and what we're fighting level 8s, and even with just killing off all the mobs, we are easily in the, way higher by 5 levels. And so, again, similar to all RPGs, if you do have higher levels than the mobs around you, you probably won't have any problems. Remember that we were at yellow, and by pressing that kind of glowing holy circle, we are able to delay the progression towards the red. We are now from yellow to green, and so it gives us a little bit extra time, so to speak. Otherwise, continue on beating down these enemies, getting XP for our units. I don't think they drop anything other than just XP. Oh, sorry, you do get those Arcana Flares, which again, I'm assuming you can trade in later on. So that's another reason why you want to kill everything. Alright. Okay, and another bottle of fluid. The MP one, I would say, is much more valuable than HP. Okay, a great one. Gold normal attack to all targets. So this will help save some MP. If you put it on your fastest unit, in this case, I know that Iska's my fastest unit, then you can just equip it. And keep in mind, again, you can now combo different things. If you have this one, it changes your normal attack to all AoE. Know that I found something earlier called normal attack enhance. So by using both of them together, the normal attack to all targets and then normal enhanced on top will increase the damage to it. So this is what I mean by playing around with synergies. If you remember the things you got, then you can do that. Okay, so it can clearly see that before the 4th stage, because we're on level 3 and we just finished it, if you chose to, you can warp out without fighting the boss. I don't recommend doing that unless you really think you're going to lose. Also, if you found enough vitality orbs, just use it right before the boss, just like using food right before a boss, especially since you're low on MP most of the time. Other than that, not sure what we're up against. I'm assuming that the boss will be moderately difficult, but not too difficult. At the end of the day, they want us to kind of succeed and enjoy it. This is also only level 4, so there should be 20 levels. Can't imagine this being too difficult. That being said, we're going to play it normally. Remember that unlike most teams outside, we don't have a zone, we don't have any dual debuffs, so you're just going to have to use units. And that's why I chose to bring Aes Hismina using her ability. She does have that, not only the attack, which is the equipment pierce. Remember that we found a defensive Grasta that helps rage, which we can use. Also raises her physical resistance as well. So if you have found some defensive Grasta on your defensive unit, you're probably going to be okay. Obviously, that's why I said that you do want to bring either a unit that can defend, you also want a unit that can heal. So I'm assuming that the 5th ability or character team party type is support. And I'm not sure if support would be better at healing or not. But in the case of my magic user Aosaki, you can still equip emergency aid as a rune, and it doesn't really matter, it's not specialized for that, and so we win. There you go. Get some extra stuff. The bonus, remember that we have an item equipped that increases our Arcanic Flare farming by 10%, so we got a bonus of 50 for that 500. And of course, make sure you open everything. These are the OOP arts that you can now take outside the dungeon. This is what I mean by at the very end, you can register 1 rune. So choose the rune that you think is going to be most useful for a future run. make sure you choose the high rarity ones instead of the boring ones. And so in this case, just have to make sure, if you're not sure, go back to your team, check the ones that are the name of the one you want to use the most, and bring the appropriate one. In this case, I'm going to choose the gold normal attack to all target. I can't see how that is bad. I used it against the boss, if you didn't notice, and it killed off the mob as well as did damage to the boss as well. So remember that AoE attacks are going to be very, very useful here. Okay, not sure about the time coins, whether or not I'm fast or not fast. I'm assuming that if you're really slow, you get nothing. Other than that, that is pretty much it. After you do finish your first run, you go into a long dialogue with Noaxis as well as some of the other inhabitants of the new area, and they talk about some features later on, such that you can trade in the items you have, which is the OOP arts. You can get them appraised, or you can sell them. One thing I will note that the menu when you go into those shops for selling versus trading in, if you say it's blah blah blah's choice, that means I believe that's a sell. Whereas if you just said the left one, which is the standard one, which will in some cases either say appraise or buy or whatever, then the left one is the default. The one that says something's choice is usually a sell option. Now it does give you one chance before choosing it, and so obviously I didn't sell anything. But you do want to appraise them, then trade them in, and I think you have to earn enough items to eventually buy them. So I think those will be unlocked in future runs. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking now and let you watch the rest of the video in peace. It'll just have a little bit more dialogue, and hopefully you enjoy. And again, have fun with the runs, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.